Hey, everybody, welcome to the Two Hats Podcast. This is a podcast about community corrections, also known as community supervision. Our goal here is to help those that are in the community and those attempting to join and become more familiar with community corrections, probation, parole, pretrial services, whether it's adult or juvenile. Meet our host. My name is Chris. We have Brittany over here, and we also have another co-host. His name is Jeff.
I was a probation officer for 4.5 years, and this year I actually left the department. But we have a lot of info coming up for you guys if you want to get into the field, and we're going to share our experiences, right, Chris?
We are. I've been a probation officer for going on close to eight to 9 years now. I worked 5.5 years in juvenile probation, and I'm currently a adult probation officer now in another state. Disclaimer, based on my current department's social media policy, I cannot identify where I work at. So that's something that we just won't discuss. I could talk about my experiences as a probation officer, but mostly I'll be kind of referring more to my 5.5 years as a juvenile probation officer in Western Pennsylvania, because I have no limits on that because I don't work there anymore.
Amen.
Right?
No limits.
So kind of moved up a little bit in the world, but lots of experiences. Our third co-host, his name is Jeff. He's actually a supervising probation officer in California. However, he could not make the first episode of the podcast because, as many people know, they're dealing with wildfires out there. And a big part of his responsibility also is helping his local county deal with that type of emergency. He does wish he could be here. We have spoken to him. We have checked in on him. He is doing fine. Very overworked, very tired. I can imagine the long hours, especially, dealing with that kind of natural disaster. But, he does, we are looking forward to the perspective that he brings in. So you have someone that was a juvenile officer. You have somebody that was an adult officer, and you also have somebody who's a supervising probation officer who actually is probation officers in the field. So we're trying to bring you a wide variety to this podcast so that so we get a good idea of what the field of community corrections, community supervision, probation, parole really is. Because we're kind of like that redheaded stepchild. That kind of goes into the whole name of the podcast.
You hit the nail on the head with that one. I don't know why they treat us like that, but it's like we're just a little bit subpar, and I don't know why. But we're going to share a lot of information, and like he said, we have people from different levels in the field, and we also come from different areas around the country, so that's going to bring in different perspectives as well, because everybody does things differently in different parts of the country.
Back in PA, things are different from county to county. So it's not even necessarily like the whole state does something one way. Kind of where it is where I'm at right now, this state does everything one way. We are probation and parole officers for the entire state. We're divided into every county in the state, but we are it's one state, one system. The rules are all the same. The equipment we're given, the policies and procedures is all the same. But when I was an officer in Pennsylvania, we're talking Pennsylvania, I think, has 67 different counties, and they do things 67 different ways. There's a social work aspect of probation and parole, where your job is to kind of be a social worker, case manager, where you're trying to be a change agent. You're trying to guide the offender, the client, the juvenile, whatever terminology that your particular department uses. You're trying to guide them towards reducing the chances of recidivism. You're trying to address their needs to get them where they need to be, so that they're not out there victimizing people, breaking the laws. Then there's the law enforcement hat. And, that's where, there's issuing warrants, violations, doing searches, doing warrant sweeps, arresting people, taking people to jail. We work with federal agencies. We work with local law enforcement, sheriff's office, police departments. So there's that aspect. So this is a career where there literally is two different competing um, ideologies, and they kind of go together. And that's kind of where we got the name Two Hats, because you're wearing the social worker hat and you're wearing the law enforcement hat, and you're trying to create a balance. Now, back to what Brittany was saying is that there's different counties, different states, however their jurisdiction, their department works, is some lean more towards the other than the other. So I will say, Brittany, how would you say your old department? How would they lean, on that scale between social worker and law enforcement?
Definitely more social worker. They wanted to change from people calling the defendants being called defendants to calling them clients. So it's way more. It's less tactical than what you do. We don't do it. We didn't do any warrants. We didn't do any searches. We didn't do anything remotely close to what you do in your area. So we should basically be called social workers. I don't even think we should be called probation officers, just for the department that I was in, because there was no officer aspect to it for me, in my opinion. I mean, we've had many conversations about the differences between my department and your department.
Yes, and that's definitely something we can definitely get more into detail on in further episodes, because, like I said, it's such a different field from where you're at, because you have county-based probation, you have state-based probation, you have federal probation, and they're all different, and they all have different requirements and ideologies that they're pursuing. As Brittany was saying, my department, I want to say we're good. We're probably about 60% law enforcement, 40% social worker, which is still actually really fairly pretty close to 50-50. They do emphasize a lot on, trying to be that change agent, but we do those things like searches, serving warrants, arrests, working with local agencies. We do all those things. And, to be honest with you, that's the fun stuff. That is the fun stuff, being able to get out there and do that. Now I know you're saying on your side, your agency was more social worker side, but you guys did issue warrants or request warrants. And
we requested. We didn't always get them, but we requested them. But we wouldn't be the ones to serve it, so we would have to get local law enforcement to come and serve the warrant.
Yeah, but the probationers know that you had that power, because that's something you can do over their head. And anytime you have that ability to take somebody's freedom, that always can lead to, resistance and conflict.
Very much so, it can. But we try not to say that to them because we don't want that conflict. So with training and stuff like that, we're actually told, don't tell them that you can do this, because they don't want there to be any confrontation there, because we don't have any, I didn't have any handgun or no type of protection. When they came into the office, there was nothing. So we try to avoid that, talking like, oh, you can go to jail, you can get a warrant. Yeah, we didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah, but I'm sure you had frequent flyers. People have been on probation before that violated. And they knew, hey, you know what? She might be real nice right now, but I can come in the next day and there could be a cop right there waiting for me.
I like how you put that. They're frequent flyers.
Hey man, probation. We know the goal is to reduce the recidivism. We know it doesn't always work.
Right, of course.
Statistically, it's about a 30% recidivism, I think, is a national standard. Now, of course, different states have different numbers.
Yeah.
But I think nationally, I believe it's around 30%, which is a recidivism rate, which means there's 60% of people that, close to 70% of people that are not, making that change that the system wants them to make. So, our goal is, and that's something we'll talk about in future episodes. We could talk about, evidence-based practices and, different assessments and different methods that can be used to help someone, help them, move towards that change, which would be really good for, people that are looking to get into this field, that kind of have a vision of what it is, but not really realizing that it's pretty different based on where you are.
Exactly.
So that's kind of our purpose for this podcast. We just want to be able to put it out there so people understand what community corrections, and there's so many different names. There's community corrections and community supervision. They both have the word community in them because the people you're seeing are not locked up. They are out and about. They're in the community, um, and your goal is to supervise them, or corrections. Try to make a correct their behavior. Then there's probation. The next episode will probably go deeper into the differences between what is probation, what is parole, what is pretrial services, and what is post-release supervision. They're all very similar in the fact that they are all under community supervision, community corrections, but they all have different terminology, different rules and requirements. So, like I said, the purpose of this podcast, we're really trying to be aim more towards people that are already in the field, that kind of want to learn how things are handled in different parts of the country, even between different agencies, and also for those that are looking to get into this field. If you're in college, pursuing psychology, sociology, criminal justice, and you're thinking about being a probation officer and you're just looking for more information, this is definitely our goal, is to aid with that.
So I'm excited. We're gonna be posting content weekly? We doing our episodes weekly or what?
That's the goal, at least once a week. Try to put out once a week. We're gonna have different things, or it might just be us discussing topics. We might be bringing in guests. Like I said, we have other probation officers, parole officers, juvenile officers that we communicate with outside, and they from all over different parts of the country. We want to bring them in as guests so they could talk to us and tell us how they do things where they come from, so that if you're in their area and you're looking to become an officer, you might say, "Oh, okay, I didn't know that's what they did out there." Um, so yeah, we have a lot of good ideas. Definitely make sure you leave comments and questions down in the comment section. One, that helps the podcast grow. Two, it also gives us feedback on how we're doing, and also gives us questions that we can help address in future episodes for those that would like to know.
Leave comments, please. Leave comments.
Also, we can be reached on Instagram at Two Hats Podcast. That's TWOHATS Podcast. Also, we have our own Instagram. Mine is at the tactical_probation officer. Just to let you know, I only allow people that are actually in law enforcement to follow me. It's nothing personal. It's just I have a lot of content on there, and just to protect myself, I only allow people that are in law enforcement have a similar mindset to follow.
But everybody can follow Two Hats Podcast, correct?
Anyone can follow that podcast. Yes, that's open. There's no restrictions.
That one is public.
Yes.
And we're gonna leave our social media links in the description bar below, so you can just click and you can go check us out on Instagram. My Instagram is at your favorite PO. My Instagram is public, unlike Chris here. But we're gonna leave all that information in the description box for you guys.
Saying, well, why do these people get to tell us about community corrections, probation, parole? Why they get to tell us that? So I'll let Brittany go first. She'll give you a little bit about her background, what makes her qualified to do this podcast, and then, like I said, I'll do mine, and then when we get Jeff on, hopefully the next episode or episode after that, depending on how long it takes for him to deal with what's going on out there in California, then we'll have him give his background, which his is clearly, with him being a supervisor, he has way more years of experience. He has a lot longer resume than either one of us do. And actually, if you actually go to the at Two Hats Podcast, the first couple posts are all about us as your hosts, so you can actually read our descriptions and get a little bit more information about us. But Brittany, I'll let you go first.
Yes. Okay. Great. So I have an actual degree in psychology, a bachelor's degree. I know a lot of probation officers, parole officers, they have degrees in criminal justice, but I don't. And I supervise over No, roughly 150 offenders every month, adults only. I've never dealt with juveniles. I was probation officer for 4.5 years here in Texas.
So how me and Brittany met was she has a YouTube channel for her your favorite PO, and I was just googling, go looking through YouTube one day, saw her video, watched a couple of her videos, and then reached out to her via I think Instagram, and we just kind of built a relationship. And then she actually invited me on. So actually, if you go to her YouTube channel, which will be in the description below, there's actually a couple of other interviews when we all started this thing, where she interviewed me about my history. Um, so I kind of give right now. I'll give you a kind of a quick version of what's in those episodes. So if you do actually want to go to hers and watch her video interviewing me, I think there's like three or five, like three, don't we? I think we have three
Yeah,
videos
we have
together.
3.
Yeah, we have three together. Where if you want some more background information, I actually got some pretty good stories on there too from my time as a juvenile officer. Which a lot of people don't really realize that juvenile officers, they get down. I mean, they put in work.
I didn't know.
Of course, it depends on where you are, because then it depends on where that pendulum shifts between the social work aspect and the law enforcement aspect. I feel like most juvenile officers kind of lean more towards the social worker aspect, and I think that's kind of appropriate for the clientele that you're working with. I would say with the agency I worked with, which is clearly right here, because I don't work there anymore, so they can't tell me what to do. We were pretty 50-50, and I think that was a pretty good mix. But even within the agency, different POs kind of handle things differently, where I felt like I was more 50-50, where some of my coworkers were more 70-30 towards the social worker side. And the department allowed you to kind of handle your clientele and handle your caseload how you wanted. So I started with when I got out of college. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. When I got out of college, I worked in a bank. I left banking and took a position working at a reform school for juvenile delinquents that are court ordered to attend. There, I took a job as a drug and alcohol counselor. I worked there for, I want to say, 3.5 years, which gave me really good experience working with juvenile delinquents. We worked closely with probation officers because they would have to come check on their delinquents every month. They kind of guide us and tell us, hey, this is what the kids' problems are. Can you work towards these? Whether it's family, whether it's really heavy substance abuse, whether it was education, whatever their deficiencies were, or their deficiencies, we kind of tailor towards them. So that kind of made me want to become a probation officer. Working with these probation officers, kind of seeing the dedication, the amount that they had working with these kids, and how involved they were. So I was able to get hired on working here as a juvenile probation officer. So I worked there for 5.5 years before my wife decided that she wanted to move from Western PA. I was perfectly glad with staying where we were, but she wanted to move. And so I ended up taking a job as a adult probation and parole officer in another state. So that's where I am now. It's been good. I think coming over from the juvenile side to the adult side was a big change. I had to learn a lot. We didn't have to deal with bond and things like that in juvenile. If you arrest them, they go to detention. They have a detention hearing, and either they go home or they sit in detention until they saw the judge. Or as opposed to here, there's bond, and judges, magistrate might set one bond, and they go to a first appearance, and then that judge lowers their bond, and they're back out in the street. It's a different kind of system, but
Very
I've
much
gotten
so.
used to it. I mean, I've been doing it. I've been being an officer for 2.5 years, so I've definitely learned. So I feel like I have a great experience. I have both sides. I have the juvenile side that I can pull from, and I have the adult side I can pull from, even though, like I said, mostly I will be pulling from that juvenile side because I have no limits on what I can talk about on that side. So, and then like we're saying about Jeff, with him being a supervisor, he brings a lot of experience to the conversation for people that eventually want to move up and kind of want to know what does it take to supervise other probation officers.
I have a channel here on YouTube, and it is called Your Favorite PO, which I think I'm going to change the name pretty soon. since I am not actively in their role anymore, but I don't know. And on there, you're going to find tips on interviews, how to get that job interview to become a probation officer. And then there's also videos for offenders who might need some help being successful on probation. So there's like a little mixture of for info for aspiring POs and then info for people on probation. But here at our podcast, Two Hats Podcast, we will be uploading videos every Wednesday, right, Chris?
That's the goal.
That's the goal. So you guys need to hold us accountable. So if you have some comments, if you have some topics that you want us to talk about, please feel free to hit us up on our Instagram or down here in the comment section.
Exactly. So overall, our vision for this podcast is we want it to grow. Clearly, we want it to grow. We want to bring in other community corrections professionals into our orbit. Definitely, especially on our social media platforms. We want other people. We want to be able to bring people in as guests so they can talk about their experiences as officers where they work at, so that there's a broad idea of what community corrections, community supervision, probation, parole, pretrial services, juvenile probation, what it all means, so that if you're in the field already, you can get a taste of what other people are doing. And then if you're not, if you're in college or high school, or you're looking to make that leap into this career, you kind of have an idea. Because I feel like a lot of people know what cops do. You got live PD, you got cops, bad boys 1, 2, 3. You have ideas of what social workers do. You have idea of what they do in terms of case management and working with clients. But I feel like a lot of people don't really know what probation and parole does. I know when I'm out in the streets, I pull up somewhere and I get out my car, people will see me, I'm wearing, duty belts, have a lot of the same equipment that police officers have. I have a badge on my vest. A badge on my shirt or my vest. I have a badge on my belt. And the first thing they think is that I'm a police officer. And they're not necessarily, then when they ask, what you here for? I say, I'm a probation officer here to check on my offenders. A lot of people don't know, unless they're in the system already, or they had a family member that was in the system. A lot of people don't know what we do. And I feel like expanding the education out there is a benefit for everyone involved. So that's kind of the vision. That's our vision. We want to expand and put out there what probation and parole and community supervision really is and what it means.
I'm excited. We're going to have some good info for you guys.
Yes.
So get ready.
I'm excited for the interviews because Brittany does a very good interview. Like I said, if you go to her channel, watch the one she's done with me and with some other officers, and actually with some actual offenders, or as she calls them, clients. She does very good interviews. So make sure you check out her channel. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, comment, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you definitely follow us on our social media, which will be in the comments below.
Yes, it's lit over here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to Two Hats Podcast. Remember, check us out every Wednesday and leave a comment, like, and share.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Be safe.